Well, good morning. Welcome to the 2010 Amesbury Memorial Day program, organized by VFW Post 2016 from Amesbury and Newport and Our Ladies Auxiliary in partnership with the City of Amesbury and also the Landry Stadium Management Committee. My name is Mike Gormalley. I am a past post commander of the VFW and recently retired, thank you, recently retired from the VFW National Headquarters in Kansas City, but also I had the distinct pleasure of being the assistant principal of the middle school from 85 to 90 and in this stadium for many, many different events. Now, you probably have been to some athletic events in the last few years, and the announcer will say, "Will all veterans please rise to be recognized?" Amesbury doesn't need that as much as other communities because we have this stadium. This stadium was built to honor one individual, but in order to honor that individual, it honors all veterans. So it was decided this year by the VFW Post and also Landry Stadium to have this event here. And by the end of this program, you're going to know a lot about the history of who this was stated and another veteran and other veterans that were honored. So let's start, and please join me by standing. And we will have our opening prayer by a great lady who has been a local veterans leader, not only here in Amesbury, but also around the state on behalf of female veterans, Lillian J. Eaton, past commander of the American Legion.
Good morning. This Memorial Day is sacred with the almost visible presence of those who have gone before us. We honor the memory of those who gave their lives in the service of our country and those others who have dropped their burden by the wayside of life and gone to their eternal rest. This ceremony today deepens our reverence for the dead. As we pay our respect to our departed comrades, we recall their accomplishments. We promise to keep the peace for which they bought and paid for with their blood. As we stand here this morning, will you not consecrate yourselves with us to emulate their sacred service, that those who rest in heroes' graves may not have died in vain? Let us further consecrate our lives to the real America worth fighting for, as we stand in bowed heads in solemn memory of our heroic dead. Amen.
Cover, please remain standing. We now have the salute to the flag by Stan Kardec, trustee for the VFW Post. He's also a retired first sergeant from the Army, followed by the national anthem played by the Amesbury High School Band under the direction of Tom Horan, who is an Air Force veteran. Stan. Present.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Present.
Present.
Please be seated. We have a lot of patriotic Americans here in Amesbury, and this next individual is an individual that you've known as a police officer. He retired from the Amesbury Police Department as a sergeant. But more important, it's his voice that we know. And I'd like to bring up Dan Cleary to sing a patriotic song.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans, white would foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Thank you, Dan. To bring the official greetings from the VFW Post 2016 is our post commander, Air Force veteran Bob Smith.
Thank you and good morning. I'd like to welcome you all today to the 2010 Memorial Day ceremonies. What a great turnout. I thank you all for coming down and being with us today. A day that we remember in our hearts and minds of the ultimate sacrifices made by so many of our own soldiers. We shall never forget them and what they mean to our very freedoms that we enjoy every day. For they were the strong, our warriors, and our very heroes of our flag, country, and community. We also honor the names today of James Landry, Bob Tell, and remember our most recent loss, the ultimate sacrifice, Sergeant Jonathan Shea. The Veterans of Foreign Wars have a motto: honor the dead by helping the living, and that's where we are here today. Enjoy Memorial Day services and to get together with your friends and families, but keep in your hearts today of all veterans that you may know that may be in your family, relations, or friends, and offer a thank you. Have a nice day.
You know, Bob is very humble about what our post does, but I need to make two announcements today so that you all know what's happening in 2 weeks at our state convention in Peabody. First of all, we have been supporting a program at the Cashman Elementary School about the boxes to the troops. A lot of you are participating in that. Well, we were able to nominate one teacher this year, Karen Iwaski, for the VFW Citizenship Award. She went from our post to the district, which entailed all the way from Lawrence down to Saugus, all the way to Gloucester. She won at that level, then she went to the state level, and she is the state winner for the elementary school teachers in this state. And a lot of you have received the reprint today. Well, that reprint comes from our newspaper, our Post newsletter, and for several years it's been placed into national competition with other smaller posts. And we were told 2 months ago it came in second place in the nation. Our editor has humbly sitting over there, and that's Marine Corps veteran Steve Iwaski, better known to you as a mailman, Steve. This next individual is not I have to tell you, I met him at the first time at our Christmas dinner a couple years ago when he first became elected mayor. And proudly, he wore his uniform at that event. And every time I come back from Memorial Day, I know he does it for Veterans Day, he wears his uniform. So bringing the official greetings from the city of Amesbury is Mayor Thatcher Kieser, better known as Lieutenant Colonel.
Thank you, Mike, and thanks, Bob, for a great job by the VFW to make this ceremony as good as it is. And on behalf of the whole community, want to thank all of you who are in attendance today. What a great turnout for a wonderful venue in order to do this. So I want to thank all of you for being part of the ceremony today. You know, we all woke up this morning, probably like I did, wondering if our neighbors were burning a fire or left their fireplace going. I could smell the smoke. I got to downtown and I could smell the smoke in the downtown, thinking, boy, is somebody else burning something? And then I learned that this is caused by fires up in Canada blowing down here. And the thought I had is, with the amount of smoke that we're smelling now, imagine the level of smoke and fire on the battlefield that our veterans must have endured, especially on that day, December 7th, 1941. And I take it as just sort of a small reminder of that event and the hazardous duties that veterans across the world and across time have served. And so Memorial Day is a ceremony to remember those who we lost. Veterans Day is to honor all veterans. So it is a fitting tribute to be here today in the Landry Memorial Stadium, remembering those who were lost in battle and endured the smoke of battle. But what I also want to make note of this morning as we're marching down along the parade route, one thing that I noticed very much, the veterans of James Landry and Bob Antel's generation physically struggling to stand up at attention and render a salute to the flag as it went by. And again, my thought is that's a generation, as following generations also, truly recognize what that flag stands for and the price that comes with honoring that flag and holding to the ideals of that flag. There is a high price to be paid by many, and to watch the veterans of that generation struggle to stand up because they truly do recognize the price that's paid for that flag. So again, on behalf of the whole community, to honor those veterans who have served and those who have lost their lives in order for the rest of us to continue to honor the flag. And I think it's also important for those veterans to tell their story, much like Bob Antel did, a wonderful storyteller. It's important that he express what happened and the price paid by others. And it's also very important for the rest of us to listen to those stories and pass those stories down so that all of our generations following truly appreciate, just like our veterans, what the flag means and what the price is for maintaining our freedoms with that flag. So with that, thank you all for being here and part of this ceremony.
Our next speaker, I am proud to say, served in the United States Navy, and then she came back and got a degree in social welfare, social work. Now, she could have done other things, but she decided to come to Amesbury, and she became our veterans agent. 2 years ago, I was here for Christmas, for the Christmas dinner, so I went to go visit her. And she had a couple of the mature veterans in her office. and she was treating him just like her own father, making sure that they were going to be at the dinner that night. But I've come back when she's been with younger veterans, and I'm very proud to say that you have a very good working veterans agent in Amesbury. And without further ado, I introduce Kristen Larue, Navy veteran.
Good morning and welcome. My name is Kristen Larue and I'm proud to serve as the Veteran Service Officer for the town of Amesbury. Please allow me to take this opportunity to introduce a very special guest among us today. Mr. Bernie Thompson, a resident of Merrimack, was a first-class gunner on the USS Indianapolis. Although he has struggles to continue with the injuries sustained during the attack, we are honored he could join us today. Please join me in honoring Pearl Harbor veteran and survivor Bernie Thompson. What I know of James Landry, I am privileged to have learned from Bob Antel. In a recent letter, Bob describes James as a private man that only few knew very well. It was those that knew him that were truly proud to call him a friend. Bob also had expressed the pride James felt at having been stationed on the Henderson, as this was his father's former duty station. James also enjoyed his rate as a baker, recalling fondly how he and fellow shipmates had volunteered to make 750 fruitcakes for a ship-wide Thanksgiving dinner. This was one of Bob's incredible gifts, to recall with uncanny precision the events throughout his lifetime. It was through these talents that Bob bestowed many gifts unto all of us who knew him, tangible pieces of history that stick with you, stories that you cannot help but pass on. One such occasion took place during a taped interview with Haverhill's public access program, When I'm 64. The interviewer asked Bob to explain the events that led up to Pearl Harbor as he remembered them. Bob, with a smile spreading across his face, recollects the details of the night before December 11, 1941. He says, "I remember the weather that night was nice, as it always was. There was a battle of the bands, where all the ship's bands were performing. There was dancing, and of course there were plenty of girls. But I didn't go. I stayed behind with two of my shipmates to maintain the motorboats. The highlight of my night was an RC Cola, a pint of ice cream, and a Clark candy bar." At 8 p.m., the Lucky Strike hit parade blasted its hits over the airwaves, with Chattanooga Choo Choo taking the #1 slot. I remember it like it was yesterday. Thank you for being here today, and thank you for continuing to honor our veterans, past and present.
Thank you, Kristen. Before I continue, I want to introduce some local officials, and I also have to tell you that they're in good shape. They're very good shape because they had to double time to get up to a position in the parade, and I have to thank them for that. But I'd like to introduce the following individual: Counselor James, and please hold your applause until I finish. Counselor James Kalkhorst, Counselor Robert Gilday, Marine Corps veteran, Counselor Joe McMillan, District 5, Counselor Derek Kimball, District 6, also served in the Army National Guard, Counselor Stephen Dunford, District 3, Army veteran, Counselor at Large Alan Neal, and Council President Bob Lavoie. Thank you for coming. Some individuals are very concerned about what is taught in our schools today because they lack, at times, the attention and recognition to our veterans, both past and present, in the history books. Well, we're very fortunate here to have as our speaker high school social studies teacher Paul Jancewicz, better known to all of us as Jancy. He also served in the Marine Corps, and he was a good friend of Bob Antel. So without further ado, Paul.
Thank you. Before I begin, I just want to welcome and note the family, Bob's son David behind me, his girlfriend Sandy, Bob's cousin Madeline, and Dave's son, or Bob's grandson Dave, and then another Dave right here named David Oliver, 3-year-old, and Josie, his wife, Bob's sister Mary Lou, and her husband, I believe? Roger. I'm sorry. Thank you. It's good to have them here. It's good to have all of you here. My remarks, you'll be pleased to know, are fairly brief. Most people don't complain and say, I wish his speech were longer. So I tried to keep that in mind and to bring a few things into play for this special day. I am extremely honored to be granted the opportunity to speak here today. It's particularly special for me because of this location, this large memorial that stands to remind us of the sacrifices that have been made in the cause of freedom. Those same sacrifices that have been made in the cause and are being made by men and women overseas currently serving. Some of my former students, I note, are out there who have served, and I thank you personally for your service. Specifically, we can continue to be pained by the deaths, of course, of Derek Hines and Jordan Shea, men who recently gave the last full measure of devotion while in the full flower of youth. It has always been particularly difficult to endure the loss of young people. In 1996, my wife and I were privileged to visit the USS Arizona Memorial. We took the time and touched the name of James Landry, whose remains rest below the waters of Pearl Harbor still. Of course, at that time, I could never have imagined that I'd someday be speaking in the memorial named for him, about the last Amesbury man ever to talk with him before the date that shall live in infamy, 7th of December, 1941. Thanks to a number of individuals, including Russ Monroe and Mia Rowlands of Amesbury High School, and 2 Vietnam veterans, retired Amesbury High School teacher Lieutenant Colonel Kranz and Dennis, of course, as you know, Ski Iworski. Thanks to them and many others, there's a vast amount of information that has been preserved about Bob Antel and his military experiences. Therefore, in the interest of time, I'll highlight only a few facts regarding these experiences, and possibly, perhaps, more significantly, I'll try to give you a little insight into the nature of this man, insight into his character. Bob Antel, to me, was an American original. For all of the times I'd heard him talk of his significant World War II involvement in the U.S. Navy, I can never once recall hearing him speak of feeling sorry for those tribulations or losses. He actually had an outstanding attitude about it all. He came to recognize the necessary evils that come with combat, with war experiences, and he seemed to understand and to believe in the cause that he and others were fighting for. For him, it was clear-cut. Bob was as straight as an arrow, which is perhaps as appropriate as any analogy can be for a man who also took pride, such great pride in Amesbury Indian sports. Bob's happiest tales were of his football buddies with whom he'd accomplished so much on these same sporting fields that we are on now prior to this stadium being built. Those were the great victories about which he most loved to reminisce, men battling men without the dire outcomes he'd have to see later in his youth. Bob did what others of his time often could not. He put into words the things that his generation felt about life. A child of the Great Depression, he was faced with the greatest conflict this world has yet known, and he rose to that occasion. He put aside the football fields, the childhood dreams, the hopes for a great future. He gambled it all in the name of freedom and the love of a nation that had taught him that sacrifice was not so much an option as an obligation. And he did this without the kind of bitterness that so often accompanies such choices. Let us not be so foolish as to believe that these were not choices. Bob chose to serve, and so his bed was made, and he never griped about it, at least not after the fact so much. Everybody seems to gripe in the military at some point or another. It's just something we do. It has been well documented that Bob was the last local man to speak with James Landry before his untimely death aboard the Arizona. Bob then worked to pluck survivors out of the waters and to make the area secure in the midst of great confusion, shock, and devastation. He never forgot the scene, that particular scene of that traumatic devastation, but that was only part of the story of what Bob endured. After this raid on Pearl Harbor, Bob ended up serving on the famed Aaron Ward, which was attacked by fanatic kamikaze pilots off Okinawa, and thus he went into a book entitled Brave Ship, Brave Men. A stickler for detail, Bob could recall nearly every ship in that theater of operation, and he could quote in detail the attacks on Pearl Harbor. He'd be angered once in a while with himself when he forgot the name of even one ship in that engagement. But he was never at a loss when thinking back to those old football field experiences, those bloodless battles of sporting rivalries which likely set the tone for his survival in the midst of more serious action. This year, my psychology classes explored two topics in some detail. We explored the meaning of pain and suffering in our lives and the question of necessary violence. Talk about making your students suffer pain and violence. Well, nevertheless, this is Whittier land, and I offer up a brief poem written by Ella Wheeler Wilcox that may cast a little light on this connection of those who served. She states, "War is destructive, wasteful, brutal, yet the energies of man are brought to play, and hidden valor by occasion met, leaps to the light as precious jewels may, when earthquakes rend the rock. The stress and the strain of war stirs men to do their worst and best. Heroes are forged on anvils hot with pain, and splendid courage comes but with the test. Some natures ripen and some natures bloom only in blood-red soil. Some souls prove great only in moments dark with death or doom. This is the sad historic jest which fate flings to the world, recurring time on time. Many must fall, that one may seem sublime." Like so many of that amazing generation of men and women who served in World War II, Bob was a product of those hardships of the Great Depression. The luxury of reading or writing poetry such as this was not always an option. It did not put bread on the table. In some ways, we can assume that those Depression hardships may have helped to prepare those young men and women to endure and even persevere amidst a time of terrific tribulation and horrid devastation. Many, like Bob, like today, are volunteers. They serve so that we may live in relative safety and comfort, and most, generally speaking, believe that although you have the right to disagree with their mission, you should never forget, never ever forget that they serve and sacrifice for you and I. Bob's generation knew full well that freedom is never free, that it is something to be cherished, and that even in the end, if given the option, it must be grasped and defended. His generation paid their bills, seldom blamed the other guy, even if they seldom apologized for their own inadequacies. They tried not to cry in front of others, though age and long experience often tore them up. They stood firm because they had to learn to stand firm and never to surrender. They were of a great generation who never would have cared, in my opinion, nor dared to call themselves the greatest generation. That's a penultimate term. There were those before, and we pray that there will be those after that will be as great as that generation. Let us hope for the sake of their remembrance and the sake of us all that they were not yet the greatest generation that this nation shall ever produce. Still yet they are the people that I grew up to admire. I'm proud to have gotten to know Bob and so many others, and in this community to see that they were valued so much. After the World War II was over, Bob was an Amesbury policeman for 37 years. You can see the respect that they held in him for the number who have turned out here today. And in the true old-fashioned nature of a constable on patrol, that was Bob. He had to come back from dealing with kamikaze pilots and deadly force to deal with all the minor domestic disputes and to find a place in regular living. Maybe this is where Bob and I connected the most. Perhaps this is where all veterans come together. How do we put aside all the things that were once fearful and terrible and also exciting to again reconnect with the regular population? The average going-ons of sometimes mundane domestic life. Most importantly, how do we justify living on when others have died? This is that survivor guilt. Here at the location of what once was Amesbury High School, in front stands a statue dedicated to the many from Amesbury who served in World War I. It was sculpted by Leonard Kraske, the famed artist who created the Gloucester Fisherman. It is perhaps the best example, at least in my opinion, of a youth marching off to war. And here in the back, where so many fantastic football games and graduations have been held in this memorial, signifying the transition of youth into the adult world of contention and strife and sacrifice, it is both fitting and sad. But as both Bob and my father would say, it is life. Never underestimate the value of a good joke, and Bob was full of them. In more recent years, Bob made my students laugh when he came in. It's easy to do when you are sincere and older, and possibly being elder in years, willing to accept those failings. AHS students were intrigued by Bob's good-natured ability to look back on things once grim and to turn a joke on the foolishness that comes of human nature. When Bob talked about having all the clothing blown off his body except his belt in an explosion, he laughed about it and about being given an officer's clothing to replace and how he ended up being saluted because of it. And the students laughed. Bob always scorned the ridiculousness of regular conventions, and as such conveyed a certain amount of the jokester that he must have been in high school, the boy who wanted to laugh and be silly at a time when so much that was serious was going on in the world. We all could use more of a good laugh, even in times of sorrow, and maybe especially in times of sorrow. I will always remember Bob Antel as an American original. Bob and so many like him, though they were not always apt to say it outright, taught me by their actions and attitudes and examples that it's not what happens to you, but rather what you do with it afterwards that matters the most. About his experiences in World War II, Bob once said, "I think about it all the time. Every day I close my eyes and I'm there. I can see it like it was yesterday." May we continue to think about it as well, so that just maybe others may not have to endure it. But if they do, and if we lose them, like Ichabod March in the American Revolution, Merrill, Thornton, Landry, Justin in following actions, and so many others I haven't named, like Hines and Shea, if they have to be lost to us, like Hines and Shea and all those others, for them and for so many others, we here today and together by our actions say, we gather because we are freely dedicated to remembering what all of you did for all of us. And we honor you now and in perpetuity. May it ever be so. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. That was very nice. Just wanted to take the time, when we do a program like this, it usually takes us about 2 months to put it together. And I think that a lot of you received this pamphlet when you came in today. Brave Ship, Brave Man, Bob Antel, and also James Landry on the other side. Ski Dennis Owalski puts an awful lot of work into this, a tremendous amount of work. I know he stays up till 2 o'clock in the morning and just continues to make something very, very good like this here. And he has, as we mentioned earlier, has won 3 #1 titles in the nation, which is really incredible. So I just wanted to say today to Ski, thank you very much for the program and what you did today for us all. Thank you, Ski. I'd like to just take the moment to thank organizations that are here today. Without their help, these parades would not be possible. The Amesbury Police Department, I'd like to thank the new chief, Mark Gagnon, and Lieutenant Kevin Ouellette, and all the men. Thank you very much. We have a special detail here today with the police department that's going to do an unfolding of the flag and a folding of the flag, which we will present to the family. Fire department, thank you very much. Boy Scouts, from what I understand, thank you very much for being here today. I'm told that it's your 100th years anniversary, so congratulations and thank you for being here. Also like to say thank you to the Girl Scouts and the Cub Scouts for being here today. It takes a lot of work with all the den mothers, and thanks again. To Tom Harron, the band. Tom's also a veteran, Air Force veteran. Thank you very much. He's been here year after year. He has great music with the band, so Tom, thank you very much. To our very special Lillian Eaton for being here today to do the invocation and benediction. It's always a pleasure to be at a ceremony with Lillian, because I know from her heart it's all about military. Thank you, Lillian. Kristen Larue, I'd like to thank her also. She and I did a presentation on flag raising with the 3rd graders from the elementary school at the Polish Memorial up on Market Street. We raised 3 flags. All the children had a chance to raise a flag with us. The American flag was given to us by Polish Club member and veteran Harold Burke. That flag flew over the White House December 2nd, 2009. So thank you, Harold. I know you're here. Thank you very much. Within my group, we have a great executive board. We do a lot of things as sending care packages, honoring veterans, and a tremendous amount of work trying to raise money for like our Christmas dinner, which we have in December to welcome the troops home. To my firing squad over to the left of me, I'd like to thank them. They're here at every ceremony, and when we lose a member of our executive board or through the post, we show up at the burial site and perform the 21-gun salute. So thank you very much. And and to all else who helped out here today, the stadium committee, and if I am forgetting anybody, I'm truly sorry about that. Again, it takes a long time to put a program like this together. I'm also being told that Bob Antel, there will be an interment at the St. Mary's Cemetery, I believe, at 11 o'clock in Newburyport. So just keep that in mind also. That's on Friday, sorry, that's Friday. Thank you. Other than that, that's all I have today. Again, thank you very much. And again, keep the veterans in your hearts and minds today. I'd like to take this time to ask Tom if he would have another song from the school band, please. We're going to start here, okay? Now, once the flag is unfolded, okay? I'm going to look at it. We're going to fire. The flag will already be unfolded. Okay? We're going to fold the flag back. See the stage where they're doing the red and see them hold it. Then they fold it and do that. See them.
Please stand. Color guards, present arms.
Grateful country, grateful town, grateful schools, venue, public career. Thank you.
Order. Arms. Please be seated. Earlier, Bob Smith said that the theme of the VFW is honor the dead by helping the living. We want to start a tradition today because there are so many veterans here today. We'd like to have you join us in recognizing the veterans who are here in the audience. First off, I'd like to have all or any active duty, reserve, or National Guardsmen please stand to be recognized. Stand. Thank you for your service. We'll now honor the veterans according to the history of their start, starting with the Army veterans. All Army veterans, please stand. If you're already standing, just raise your hand. Thank you for your service. Marine Corps veterans, thank you for your service. Navy veterans, thank you for your service. Air Force veterans, thank you for your service. And last but not least, Coast Guard veterans, Coasties, thank you for your service. Before I bring up Lillian again, I just want to mention again, thank you from the VFW to the Landry Stadium Management Committee. And we'd like to just say a personal message. When they ask for your support, we hope today's program brings back why they want to support to keep this stadium the way it is. They've done a great job. Mr. Landry's picture is in front of this podium. So if you're trying to find out who he was, we ask you in the future, when you hear that they're asking for support, please offer. To end our program, I'd like to bring up Lillian J. Eaton. Please stand. Uncover.
Before I say the benediction, I would like to say just one thing, and that is, on December the 7th, AMVETS Post 147 of Haverhill always honors Pearl Harbor survivors. Bob Antel was one of our speakers, and we were honored to have Bernie today. Bernie was another one of our speakers, so I just want you to know that we have always honored Pearl Harbor survivors. Thank you. Let us pray. O God of hosts, we beseech thee to bring the blessings of understanding to the families and friends of those who have given their lives that men may be free. Grant us too, O Lord, courage so to live with the families of nations around the world that the end of strife will be the beginning of enduring peace. Grant us patience in planning our fellow men, a world in which nations resolve their differences by peaceful means. We recognize that service to her cause does not end with the termination of military service. We continue our endeavors on behalf of an honorable world peace with a feeling of profound gratitude to God and to the men and women who gave their lives as part of the cost of the noblest of causes. Let us will to live as well as will to die. Amen.
Covered. Once again, on behalf of the VFW Post 2016 and Ladies Auxiliary, we'd like to thank you for coming. We also invite you to join us at the cemetery at Bob Antel's, Jack Moen's grave. We do a ceremony at that time. And we also like to extend an invitation to all the participants in the parade to come down to the Polish Club for our collation sponsored by the VFW Post, the Polish Club, and the Ladies Auxiliary. Once again, thank you for coming.
Just like Michelangelo into the blue on heavenly wings. Cargo ham bones don't take off, no smoke, no mirror, no strings. I can't take off these dark shades. I can only say how it's too beautiful. Our town on TV, our town. There's you and me, upside down, hanging out of an airplane.